Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachos, page 76. A, top of the page, new subject, new Mishnah at the very top of 76A. Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, Mishnah. Kol ha-menachos tu'unois, sholosh me'ois, shiva v'chamesh, me'os be'ito, shiva ve'ito v'chitin, v'Rabbi Yossi omer v'botzek. Kol ha-menachos bo'es eser, chutz milechem aponim, v'chavite kohen gadol shehem bo'es, 12 divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir oimer, kulam bo'es 12, chutz michalos toidu nezirus shehem bo'es eser. All the meal offerings require rubbing 300 times and striking 500 times. Wow, I didn't know that. All the meal offerings require rubbing 300 times and striking 500 times with one's fist or palm. Rubbing and striking, which is shifa and be'ita. I think beat is like kicking, but maybe it's beat, I think, means kicking, but they're applying it to striking. And she'ifa is like rubbing, I guess. Have to be. Rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels to remove their husks prior to grinding them into flour. And Rabbi Yossi says they are performed on the dough to ensure a smooth product. All of the meal offerings come as 10 loaves or 10 wafers from each 1/10 of an ephah of flour, except for the showbread and the griddle cake offering of the high priest, which come as 12 loaves or wafers. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says they all come as 12 loaves, except for the 4 types of loaves that accompany the thanks offering, and the 2 types of loaves that accompany the peace offering of Nazarite, which come as 10 each. That's the Mishnah. Now for the Talmud. Tana Shavachas Boit Shtaim Shavshtaim Boit Shalosh Boi Rabbi Yirmiyah Amtoye Vasroye Chad Oidim Amtoye Vasroye Tre Mai Teku. So this Teku would be, let's see here, Boi Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Jeremiah. He asks a lot of tekus, by the way. I didn't mention it before. Rabbi Yirmiyah Mamish asks a lot of tekus, but let's see. The 249th teku ganze. That's what it is. Yeah. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah. This was the teku of Monday, February 23rd. Monday, February 23rd. It was Teku 249. Okay? Very nice. Now we got up to it now. Already in the end of March. Very nice. Then a month later. A ton that a bright rubbing and striking are done in the following manner. He rubs once and strikes twice. He rubs twice and strikes 3 times. This sequence is repeated 100 times, so that he rubs 300 times and strikes 500 times. Rabbi Jeremiah raises a dilemma. Rabbi Yirmiyah raises a dilemma with regard to rubbing. Is the rubbing of the hand back and forth over the surface of the item considered one rubbing? Or is perhaps rubbing back and forth considered 2 distinct rubbings? What's the correct count? The Gemara states we don't know. We need to wait for Messiah for this one. Okay. Shifa v'ita v'chitin of Yossi omer. V'botzek yibo Elohu, v'botzek v'chitin oidim la'af, v'botzek toshima. Titania shifa u'b'ita v'chitin. Rabbi Yossi omer shifa v'ita v'botzek. The Mishnah teaches rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels, while Rabbi Yossi says they are performed on the dough. The Gemara commented, the dilemma was raised before the sages. Does Rabbi Yossi mean that these actions are performed on the dough and not on the wheat kernels? Or perhaps he means that they are performed not only on the kernels but also on the dough. The Gemara suggests come and hear solution. As it is taught in the Braita, rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels. Rabbi Yossi says rubbing and striking are performed on the dough. Kol ha-menachos bois, kulei. Shtem-esrei lechem ha-ponim be'hei yiksiv be'hei. The Mishnah teaches that according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, all of the meal offerings come as 10 loaves or wafers, except for the showbread and the griddle cake offering of the high priest, which come as 12 loaves or wafers. The Gemara examines the sources for these exceptions. With regards to the showbread, is written explicitly of it, and you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes of it. Leviticus 24, verse 5. Chaviti kohen gadol asya chuka milechem haponim. That the griddle cake offering of the high priest is offered as 12 units is derived from a verbal analogy of the word obligation written in the context of the verse discussing the showbread. With regard to the griddle cake offering, the verse states, and the anointed priest shall offer it. It is an obligation forever. Leviticus 6:15. And the verse states, with regard to the 12 loaves of the showbread, and it shall be for Aaron and his sons a perpetual obligation. Leviticus 2:24, verse 9. This is interesting. 2:49 came up, right? And it was the 249th take what we just had. I know there were other things, but this is one of them here. There are other, sources which are not 249, but 249 was there, so it's interesting. The Gemara asks, according to Yehuda, who states the Mishnah with regard to all meal offerings, that they come as 10 loaves or 10 wafers. From where do we derive this halakha? The Gemara answers that he derives it from the loaves of the thanks offering. Just as there are 10 loaves, so to here, with regard to all other meal offerings, there are 10 loaves. The Gemara challenges, but let him derive it from the showbread. Just as there are 12 loaves, so to here, with regard to all other meal offerings, there must be 12. Shekain Yochid HaMisnadev Shemen Nifsa Shalom Shabbos Shalom Tumah. The Gemara explains, it stands to reason that Rabbi Yehuda should derive the halacha of the other meal offerings from the loaves of the thanks offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the loaves of the thanks offering and differ from the showbread in several respects. They are offered by an individual and not by the public. They are brought by one who donates and not as obligatory offerings. Oil is used in their preparation. They are qualified when left overnight, whereas by contrast, the rite of the showbread demands that it be left on the table for 8 days. They are not brought on the Sabbath, unlike the showbread, whose rite is performed on the Sabbath, and they are not brought in a state of ritual purity, unlike the showbread, which is brought even in a state of impurity. Adirabe Milechem haponim Havi lemelav shekain hekdish ulevoina matzav etzem. The Gemara responds, on the contrary, Rabbi Yehuda should derive the halacha of the other meal offerings from the showbread, as they resemble the showbread in several respects. They are consecrated proper to the most sacred order, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are of lesser sanctity, and they are brought with frankincense, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are not. They are brought only as leavened bread, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering include some leavened bread, and each is brought as an offering by itself, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are brought together with an animal sacrifice. Hanach Tefishon, the Gemara explains these analogies between other meal offerings and the loaves of the thanks offering are more numerous than the analogies between other meal offerings and the showbread. Therefore, the halacha of other meal offerings is derived from the loaves of the thanks offering. V'i sviraland davo halamed migzera shove choyzum lamed bevinyan av neref mechavite kohen gadol mal halan 12 avkan 12. The Gemara posited previously that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, verbal analogy teaches that, like the showbread, the griddle cake offering of the high priest is brought as 12 units. Gemara asks, if we hold that a matter learned through a verbal analogy may subsequently teach as a paradigm, let us derive the halacha of the other meal offerings from the griddle cake offering of the high priest. Just as there the meal offering comprises 12 units, so to here the meal offerings should consist of 12 units. The Gemara responds, it stands to reason that Yehuda should derive their halakha from the halakha of the loaves of the thanks offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the loaves of the thanks offering and differ from the griddle cake offering in several respects. They are brought by an ordinary person and not by the high priest. They are brought by one who donates and not as obligatory offerings, and they are only brought whole, while the high priest's griddle cake offering is brought in halves, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. The pigul shelo b'Shabbos shelo b'tumah. In addition, they are disqualified as pigul. We just had pigul recently. It's past week's parsha. Meaning when they are sanctified with the intent to be consumed after their appropriate time, unlike the griddle cake offering, which is not eaten at all. They are not brought on the Sabbath, unlike the griddle cake offering, and they are not brought in a state of ritual impurity, whereas the griddle cake offering is brought by the high priest even while impure. Adirabe. On the contrary, Mechabiti Kohen Gadol, Ahavi Le'Lemelav Sheken Isoroin Klei Hekdesh Levaino. The Gemara challenges on the contrary. Rabbi Yehuda should have derived the halacha of the meal offerings from the high priest griddle cake offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the griddle cake offering in several respects. They both contain a tenth of an ephah of fine flour, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering contain several tenths of an ephah. They are consecrated when placed in a service vessel, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are consecrated when the thanks offering is slaughtered. They are consecrated property of the most sacred order, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are lesser sanctity, and they are brought with frankincense, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are not. Matzah v'etzim hagosh v'ishim v'hanefishon. In addition, they are brought only unleavened bread, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering include some leavened bread, and each is brought as an offering itself, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are brought together with an animal sacrifice. Part of their rite is bringing them near the southwest corner of the altar, unlike the loaves of the thanks offering, and parts of all of them are placed on the fires of the altar, unlike the loaves of the thanks offering. The Gemara comments that indeed these similarities between other meal offerings and the griddle cake offering are more numerous than the similarities between other meal offerings and the loaves of the thanks offering. Therefore, it seems more appropriate to derive the number of loaves from the griddle cake offering. The Gemara answers, nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda prefers to learn the halacha from the other meal offerings, which are brought by an ordinary person, from the loaves of the thanks offering, which are brought by an ordinary person. Ramir Omer, Kulam Bayis Shemes, Nemaika Savo Is, Virale, Edav Alaman Bigzeva Shava, Bukhlajam Alaman Binav, Yalaf Mechabite, the Kohen Gadol, the Hanin Afishon. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Meir says they all come as 12 loaves. The Gemara explains, what does he hold? If he holds that a matter is learned through a verbal analogy is subsequently used to teach as a paradigm, he derives a number of loaves in other meal offerings from the high priest's griddle cake offering, which was itself derived from a verbal analogy, as these similarities between other meal offerings and the griddle cake offering enumerated above are more numerous. He's related over and if he holds that a matter learned from a verbal analogy is not subsequently used to teach as a paradigm, then he derives the number of loaves in other meal offerings from the 12 loaves of the showbread. This is because the Mayor prefers to derive the status of the other meal offerings, which are consecrated property of the highest order, from the showbread, which is also consecrated property of the highest order, in contrast to the loaves of the thanks offering, which are of lesser sanctity. The Mishnah teaches that Rameir says they all come as 12 loaves except for the loaves of the thanks offering and the loaves that accompany the guilt offering and nazarite, which come as 10 each. The Gemara explains the exceptions. With regard to the loaves of the thanks offering, it is written explicitly of them that these loaves are brought in units of 10 based on a verbal analogy. With regard to the thanks offering, the verse states, and of it shall be present one out of each offering for a gift to the Lord. Leviticus 7:14. With regard to the truma of the tithe, it is stated, you shall set it apart as a gift. You shall set a part of it a gift for the Lord, a tithe of the tithe. Numbers 18:26. Just as the truma of the tithe consists of one portion of 10, so too the loaves of the thanks offering are brought in units of 10. Zirus. That 10 loaves accompany the guilt offering. The Nazarite ship is derived from a verse, as the Master says. The verse describing the thanks offering states, the cakes of leavened bread he shall present his offering with the sacrifice of his peace offerings for Thanksgiving. Leviticus 7:13. The term his peace offering serves to include the loaves of the peace offering of the Nazarite, just as each of the 4 varieties of loaves accompanying the thanks offering are brought in units of 10 loaves, so too the peace offering of the Nazarite comprises 10 loaves. Amar of Tovi bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel, Lach mein Toide she'afan arba chalos yatsa v'beina arbayim mitzvah. The loaves of the thanks offering consist of 10 each of the following 4 types: leavened loaves, unleavened wafers, standard unleavened loaves, and unleavened loaves made from flour mixed with water and oil. With regard to these loaves, Rabbi Tovi bar Kisna says that Shmuel says, in the case of loaves of the thanks offering, that one baked only as 4 loaves, one of each of the 4 types, where each loaf is the size of 10 loaves, he has fulfilled his obligation. The Gemara asks, but do we not require 40 loaves? The Gemara answers, 40 loaves are brought in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the optional fashion, in the optimal fashion. But he has nevertheless fulfilled his obligation with 4 loaves, one of each time. The Gemara continues, challenges this. But an individual brings the loaves as an offering, is required to separate truma from them by designating 1 loaf of each type to be given to the priest, which cannot be done where only 1 loaf of each type exists. And if you would say that he may separate a 10th size piece from each and every loaf, and that is difficult, doesn't the merciful one state, and of it he shall present 1 out of each offering for a gift to the Lord, which teaches that he may not take sliced bread, but rather a whole loaf. The Gemara answers, this is a case where he separated it while kneading, so that it is not considered separating a slice. Meisvei kol ha-menachot shribo misan chalason oy shemiyet midasan chalason ksherois chutz yilechem haponim v'chavite kohen gadol v'lach meitoid v'nezirus. Who, turning to 76b, who the high key Tanya kom noch shir minas khalason oy shmi minas khalason ksheros khutz ben kham panim bkhavit kohen gadol yesh moim rim af lach mit toiden zirus. The Gemara raises an objection to the opinion of Shmuel from a Braita. All the meal offerings where one increased the measure of their loaves, or where one decreased the measure of their loaves, are nevertheless fit, except for the 12 loaves of showbread and the 12 loaves of the high priest's griddle cake offering, and the 10 loaves of each variety for the thanks offering, and the 10 loaves that accompany the guilt offering of Nazarite. Evidently, no fewer than 40 loaves are fit for the thanks offering. In contradiction to the statement of Shmuel, the Gemara answers, he, contrary to 76b, Damar ki haitana detanya, kol menachos shechim b'midas chalaoson, oy shemiyad b'midas chalaoson l'ksherois, chutz milechem aponim, mechamidei kohen gadol, yeshoim af lach mitoid, Zero states his opinion in accordance with the opinion of that Tana, as it is on a Braita. All the meal offerings where one increased the measure of their loaves, or when one decreased the measure of their loaves, are nevertheless fit, except for the 12 loaves of the showbread and the 12 loaves of the high priest's griddle cake offering, and some say even the 10 loaves of each variety of the thanks offering and the 10 loaves that accompany the guilt offering of Nazarite are fit only when brought in their prescribed measures. Shmuel agrees with the first Tana, according to whom the loaves of the thanks offering and the loaves of Nazarite are fit even when not offered in the proper quantities. We'll stop here and continue in the next Amud.